It's nearly time to start cutting, but on the principle of measure as many times as you can before cutting once, I've decided, in addition to the individual cutting templates for the individual pieces, that I would do one big plan. And that's already turned up one error. Here's the individual cutting piece for an odd lamination top spine, and somehow or other I've cut that too short. Can't think how I did that, but did it I did. So that's good, that's thrown up one thing. What I did was I followed the instructions in the plans from Matthias to use the printer optimized browser version of the templates to create a PDF file with A3 paginations. And then I took that PDF file down to my local print shop and got them to print it onto A3. Because gluing up 10 A3s is a lot nicer than gluing up 16 A4s. And the printer did a remarkable job, because the PDF has a peculiarity. At the left-hand margin and at the top margin, there is actually no margin. The printer has done an amazing job of coming almost right to the edge, but I've had to continue the pencil lines where it joins for the last couple of millimeters on the top edge and on the left-hand edge, so that this cross-hatching pattern, which Matthias's big print program produces, extends far enough for me to actually use them to do the lining up. I've just ripped a straight edge onto each of my 9 boards, and I'm also slightly revising my cutting plan. Because I'm doing this on a table saw, I don't already have a bandsaw, I want to arrange that everything is organized into lanes, so I can start with straight cuts like that, or in the case of one board, a straight cut across like that. What I don't want to have to do is a stop cut, because some piece is over here, something like that. Another thing I've got to be careful of is this kind of thing, where I've been mean with the paper and where there's actually 2 of them. This one here is 5 centimeters. There's 2 of these, so I've got to come out 10 centimeters plus a kerf of 2.8 millimeters, and that means that I mustn't make the mistake of thinking that the lane edge is over here at the edge of this piece. The lane edge is over here at the edge of this piece. If you did already have a bandsaw, which is unlikely, you're probably making a bandsaw because you don't have a bandsaw, but if you did already have a bandsaw, you can cut these pieces square. They are the corners of the back of the frame here, and you could cut them square and then run the frame through the bandsaw later to create these chamfers. And I've put the blade guard on. When you're doing repetitive cutting, the chances are greater that your attention will wander, and the risk of a blade accident starts to approach the more usual risk of a kickback accident. There are quite a few places where these angle pieces are needed for bracing. These little triangular gussets, and these make it easy to cut. Little additional pieces here, what are they, gussets or are they scarves? I don't know. But this angle here and this angle here are 22.5 degrees. So I've just been cutting myself out some angle pieces to help brace whilst I cut. I did a bit of trial and error with this here to get myself an angle that was 22.5, and then I took a square on every corner piece of MDF here, and I cut myself another couple of pieces at the correct angle, because I don't want to use this all the time. It's prone to slipping and is mildly dangerous. And talking of dangerous angled cuts, I've got the blade as high as I can to make that cut, because with the blade as high as it can go, more force is acting downwards than if the blade were very low, when most of the force would be acting to push this piece inward and create a pinch. And when you're making angled cuts, it's easier to cut the angle first and then to trim this end for that length, rather than cut this to length and then do the angle cut, which holds itself open to more errors. Now I've got quite a few notches to cut out, and there's quite a bit of variation as to which pieces get which notches. Here, for example, is the lower horizontal of the frame, and these are the notches for the legs, and they are cut out in every one of the even layers. This is the top horizontal of the frame. This notch here is for the upper wheel mount block, but it is only cut out of the first two layers, so one even and one odd layer. And these, in the odd layers, are only cut out of two of the odd layers. They are for the top spines up here, and it's not the same layers as this. Now, I've done this first one here with tenon saw, coping saw and chisel, and being a bit lazy, I don't want to do that on every one of these notches, so I'm going to use the table saw. I'm going to start with this horizontal cut over here, and when you've set the table saw blade to be that tall, it's going to stick out of the back of the fence of the crosscut sled, and I don't want that. So I've got two backing boards here against which to hold my piece, and I'm going to put a stop block here because I've got three of those to do. And I've also put a travel stop over here on the rip fence. Of course, I'm supposed to keep my fingers out of the way over here, but at my age you can't be too careful. With the normal fence covered up, I haven't quite got this backing board touching, so that I've still got a clearance slot here for the dust, so that this doesn't get progressively pushed out as I cut the pieces. Next up are these little triangular gussets which brace the corners of the C-frame. The tricky thing is that the grain runs along the hypotenuse of the triangles, so we're left with these parallelogram shapes to do that, and these grain gussets will have their strength like that across the corners of the C-frame. Now the plans give us the height of this triangle as 12, and they give us the height of this triangle here, which is 9.5. So what I'm going to do is cut a lane down here to give me that 12, then I'll make that cut there at 22.5 so that I can trim this part down to 9.5. Then I shall cut the hypotenuse again at 22.5, and then I'll trim to the base length to get that and that and that and that. At least that's the plan. I'm not going to try to create an exact saw curve here so that one cut would separate my parallelogram into two gussets. I'm pretty sure I would cock that up. These are my pieces that I cut from that square piece of MDF at 22.5 degrees, and the question is, can I hold that down against the crosscut sled whilst I go into the saw blade? I'm a bit nervous about this, but if I push from here, then I think I'm doing it safely.